I learned it in 3 days and made right away also a record of it with Ormandy and the Philadelphia Orchestra. But later on, I remember Rachmaninoff at a dinner in my house told me that for him, the Grieg concerto was the best concerto ever written without any exception, which was a little exaggerated in my belief, but still, it can inspire a man like Rachmaninoff to say such a thing. Do you know that since ever, I'm all the time thinking, what was the reason for any success I have had in my life? Because I certainly do not play the piano as well as most pianists who play. I never worked so much as they do, They play the piano to perfection. I know young people now who play the piano as one can't play it better. But then, when I hear them play that way, I have my little question for them. I ask them, when will you start to make music? Make music, you see, that is something which preoccupies me. That means make music is something metaphysical. A painting is a painting, visible. A sculpture is visible. A poem is visible on the paper. Well, music is visible but not audible. I mean, it exists only because there are also necessary to it the other part of musicians, the interpreters. I belong to this group, you see. I call interpreters good talents, the composers geniuses, if they are the great composers I speak of, you see. But what happened to me is something quite strange, which I observed very often, you see. I observed the fact that I come on the stage for a concert as representation, as picture of what happens on the stage. It is rather ridiculous because a fat little man like me appearing there in an evening dress looks like an undertaker, funeral things, and the piano has a little look of a coffin, if you like to know. Well, and the public fills the hall, let's say. They come after a good dinner. The women look at each other, at other women's dresses. Men think mostly about business or some games or some sports or God knows what. And there I have this crowd, not entirely quite musical, not really knowers of music, but who like music, who love music, and that is a very difficult proposition. I have to hold them, in attention by my emotion, nothing else. I can't look at them, I can't make faces, I can't tell them, now comes the great moment, now you listen, now is the great thing for you, ha 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 ha, nothing of the kind, I have to play. Look there straight in front of me. But there is a certain antenna, there is a certain secret thing. There is a thing which goes out, emanates from me, from my emotion, not from me, from my emotion, from the feeling. You like to call it soul if you like to. I don't know what soul means, but it's a word which one uses very much without knowing what it represents really. But this something, which let me call it for the moment soul, if you like, projects something which I do feel that it is doing it. It suddenly puts the audience into my hands. There's a moment where I feel them all here. I can do anything. I can hold them with one little note in the air, and they will not breathe because they wait what happens next, what will come in the music. That is a great, great moment. Not always does it happen, but when it does happen, it is a great moment of our lives.
You've said, or you've written, that when you are playing, it is like making love. And I wonder how literally you meant that. How do you mean it?
Well, I must say, I always had a sensual, not sensuous, but sensual feeling of my fingers when I have to strike something which goes out of my inner self, you know. When I have to sing out the Nocturne of Chopin, I sing it inside, but I sing it like a love song, you see, and then under my fingers, I feel, what you said, I feel a rather sensual pleasure, you know, in touching it. I become excited when I touch it E flat, which will give that sound which I need to hear. That too.
Would you explain to me, in very simple terms, as someone who is not a musician, how you produce the tone that you do?
I can tell you that. I learned from a Czechoslovakian singer who was very famous in times, who sang with Caruso in old times, in my young years. It was Emmy Destin. Emmy Destin struck me when she sang with a marvelous, marvelous voice, which just acted on me sensually, you know, which made me cry by the sheer voice, the sheer sound of voice, you know, sometimes the sound itself, not the melody or the composition, but the quality of the voice does something to me, you know, and she had that. And she had, of course, as all singers, to take her breath at the right moment. We have to take, in a way, our breath at the right moment when we speak. To make a phrase clear, we have to make that little stop and cut the phrase into the pieces which make sense, isn't it so?
Yes.
Well, that same came to me as idea when she sang. I started suddenly to feeling that I have to take breath at the piano. I sometimes press my finger on it only, which means nothing, because there is the hammer, percussion hammer. Nothing can change much in the piano. It's a percussion instrument, isn't it? But it has a vibration. When you let the string stay without letting the hammer down on it, it vibrates in the air. You have the pedal to keep it a long while if you want to, if you can. And there is a certain pressure which makes it being struck in a certain way, not hard, but just the way you want, and it sinks in you. Well, I found that for myself. And I couldn't teach that for any money in the world. I tell the young people, sing inside. You have no voice, that doesn't matter. You have the best voice if you feel singing in you.
You've always enjoyed and wanted to play composers who were regarded by your teachers or your peers as perhaps too avant-garde or too modern.
See, you say that I was always for the avant-garde. That is not quite the term I would use. You know, when I was young, I was like all the young, enthusiastic for what is new. I fought for them. I fought for Debussy, for Ravel, for Szymanowski, for Stravinsky, for Prokofiev. They were the people of my young life. Later, now, the avant-garde of today is good for the young, not for me. I'm absolutely in the dark. I don't understand at all what they mean. I think that we have no right to judge what we do not understand. I can judge only something which I understand very, very well. Then I can give you the points why, I can fight my point and everything. But what can I say about music of those men like Stockhausen or Boulez, which make noises which are for me incomprehensible, sometimes impress me loud enough or long enough or short enough. I mean, I see the actual things which I hear, but do not understand at all that language.
You've often said that you are the happiest man you know. I think people would be very interested to know what are the springs of that happiness.
My happiness came, a feeling of that happiness, feeling, the conscience of that, came right after